Closing and possession. Occupancy. It defaults to the buyer intends to occupy the property as indicated on paragraph 3E3. Occupancy may impact available financing. So keep in mind on 3E3, it asked whether it was going to be owner occupied investment property or second home, basically, I think were the options there. Unless otherwise agreed to, the property shall be delivered as is in its present physical condition as on the date of acceptance. The property, including the pool, spa, landscaping, and grounds, is to be maintained in substantially the same condition as on the date of acceptance. Just so everybody knows, if the lawn was mowed when they accepted the offer, the expectation is that the lawn will be mowed when they move out. Shannon and I are really familiar with this. Right. Even if it's the buyer's fault that the closing is delayed and our sellers have moved out of the state.
And they sold their lawnmower.
And they sold their lawnmower, right? All right. So, all right. All debris and personal property not included in the sale shall be removed by close of escrow or at the time possession is delivered to the buyer, if not on the same date. If items are not removed when possession is delivered to buyer, all items shall be deemed abandoned. Buyer, after first delivering to seller a written notice to remove the items within 3 days, may have such items removed or disposed of and may bring legal action as per this agreement to receive reasonable costs from the seller. That would be through mediation, or you could then take it to a small claims case. And when it talks about delivering to the seller, you may not know the seller's forwarding address or phone number. So you may deliver that notice to the seller's agent. Okay. Buyer is strongly advised to conduct investigations of the entire property to determine its present condition. Seller and agents may not be aware of all defects affecting the property or other factors that buyer may have considered important. Property improvements may not be built according to code in compliance with current law or have had all required permits issued and or finalized. So just something that we're seeing a lot right now is that the seller moves out and takes their fridge and there is damage behind the fridge or under the washer and dryer. And the seller really should bring it up to the buyer at that point that they notice it when they're moving out, but oftentimes sellers are not. They're vacating the property. They had no idea that there was damage back there. Buyers are moving in and saying, hey, there's water damage, and the seller didn't know about it. If the seller had moved the fridge, then the seller should bring it up. Your seller should note and call you and have a conversation so that you can have a conversation with the buyer to figure out how to proceed at that point. But sometimes the fridges are being left and then the buyer's moving the fridge to clean behind the fridge and there's damage back there. So just something that you may want to be aware of if you're representing buyers at some point in the transaction, you may want to pop that fridge out just a little, have your inspector look back there. Inspectors generally won't pull the fridge or washer and dryers out, but
if I'm the seller, I don't want. Oh, I was just thinking that if you're the seller, then do you not want the fridge? I mean, what if you like scratch the floor or something? That's what I'm afraid of.
Be careful. Absolutely. And as a seller,
you have to ask the seller because it's like they're going to come home and all their dust bunnies are going to be out and they're going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah. So as a buyer's agent, when you're heading over there to do inspections, you may be like, can you have the seller pull the fridge out 12 inches from the wall so that we can investigate behind it? And the same thing with the washer and dryer. That's a good point. So
okay, that's our
inspection email.
Let them know in advance. Yeah.
And like knock on the wall to make sure it's not soft sheetrock.
Yep.
Okay.
So those are the areas that we're seeing get missed on a regular basis. And they're causing problems because oftentimes they're not noticed until after the seller's been in possession of the property for 29 days after the close of escrow. Seller remaining in possession after the close of escrow. If the seller has the right to remain in possession after close of escrow pursuant to paragraph 3M2 or otherwise agreed, the parties are advised to consult with their insurance and legal advisors for information about liability and damage or injury to persons and personal and real property. Buyer is advised to consult with buyer's lender about the impact of seller's occupancy on buyer's loan and consult with a qualified California real estate attorney where the property is located to determine the ongoing rights and responsibilities of both buyer and seller with regard to each other, including possible tenant rights and what type of written agreement to use to document the relationship between the parties. Right? So there's our legal disclaimer. We do have a legal disclaimer in our current contract, but it's a little clearer there. So just be aware. We're starting to see more issues come up with sellers in possession after the close of escrow. With 90% of transactions closing with seller in possession, it was bound to happen, but we're starting to see more disputes come up. I haven't seen it where the seller hasn't moved out, thankfully, yet, but we're just having more issues with things not taken care of correctly by the seller when they vacate, and then disputes over deposits. Yes,
I have
Kim.
a question on the previous. So if there is an issue after closing and they're getting ready to sell, during their seller in possession time,
Uh-huh.
see if issue some kind of reaction, what happens at that point?
So and you're saying the seller's bringing it up? Or buyer.
Or whoever, right? Whoever finds it.
So ultimately, if there's a new item being discovered when the seller is in possession of the property after the close of escrow, you're still gonna be able to take them to mediation or small claims. So whoever is in the right at that point, going to mediation would help to determine that. And hopefully reach a balance if they can't come to an agreement prior to reaching that point, right? The ideal would be that everybody brings their heads together and go, oh my gosh, there's damage here that we weren't aware of. I'm so sorry. Let me make it right. Like, we have a deposit held in escrow. Please take half of it, or please take 1,000 of it to fix this. I'm so sorry, versus the seller going, well, too bad it's closed and you didn't know about it, and now it's your problem. Like, that's probably the worst possible scenario. Hopefully you can come to an agreement between the buyer and the seller of what that remedy looks like in a nice fashion. Always try to reach an agreement. And then if that fails, then you go to mediation. And then if it falls under small claims, then you could take it to small claims. And if it didn't fall in small claims, then if the arbitration paragraph is initialed, you would go to arbitration. If you don't go to mediation first, if you just take it to small claims, know that you can do that. You have the right to do that. However, you don't have the right to recover legal fees at that point. You do have to do mediation to recover the legal fees. All right. Section D, at close of escrow, the seller assigns to buyer any assignable warranty rights for items included in the sale, and seller shall deliver to buyer all copies of any such warranties. Agents cannot and will not determine the assignability of any warranties. So any warranties that are left with the property, if they say, hey, the solar's under warranty, the roof's under warranty, the fridge is under warranty, whatever it is, that documentation should be left for the buyer. Seller shall, on close of escrow, unless otherwise agreed, and even if seller remains in possession, provide keys, passwords, codes, and or means to operate all locks, mailboxes, security systems, alarms, home automation systems, internet, intranet, internet connected devices included in the purchase price, garage door openers, and all other items included in either paragraph 3P or paragraph 9. If the property is a condominium or located in a common interest development, seller shall be responsible for securing or providing any such items for the association amenities, facilities, and access. Buyer may be required to pay a deposit to the homeowners association to obtain keys to accessible HOA facilities. So basically it's saying, hey, seller, you're responsible for that keypad on the garage. We need the code for that. Or if there's a door lock that has a code, you must provide that code, or keys to operate all the locks, or the passwords to operate the security system, especially solar. We're running into that a lot. Like, the solar's monitored. You can log in and check the production of solar. That has to actually like get released from the current owners to the current buyers by the owners of the property before the buyers can log into that system. Same thing with like the Nest wall thermostats and stuff. Make sure your sellers release all their stuff online so that the new owners can actually get access.
Amy, what about the community mailbox key?
Yep, community mailbox key, it says to include it. You should include it. However, I always recommend to my buyers that they go down to the post office and get new keys issued because they will re-key those mailboxes, but technically the seller is supposed to leave them behind. I like to, if it's a regular like mailbox, like we have a walking mailbox, but it's not one of the big post office owned ones. So then we would absolutely be required to provide keys. But if it's one of the community ones, you should be providing keys to it and letting them know what box number it is so they don't have to play guess the box number with their key. And but I do recommend to my buyers that they go down and get it rekeyed. That way they know nobody else has a key to their mailbox. And the post office usually will do that without any problem. Same thing here. It talks about HOA, like the gate openers, the clicker to open the gate for the HOA or the keys for the pool. You're required to hand those over. If a deposit's required, the HOA will put that in the demand for the most part. All right, any questions about the closing and possession section 7? All right, section 8, contingencies and removal of contingencies. A is the loan. This agreement is, unless otherwise specified in paragraph 3L1 or the attached CR form, contingent upon the buyer obtaining the loan or loan specified. If contingent, the buyer shall act diligently and in good faith to obtain the designated loans. If there is no appraisal contingency or the appraisal contingency has been waived or removed, then failure of the property to appraise at the purchase price does not entitle the buyer to exercise the cancellation right pursuant to the loan contingency. If buyer is otherwise qualified for the specified loan and buyer is able to satisfy the lender's non-appraisal conditions for closing the loan. So the other one had this verbiage as well, but now it's bold and it's a little bit more out there in front. You can't remove your loan or your appraisal contingency and then say, well, if it doesn't appraise, then my buyer's going to be short funds. And then that's the loan contingency. So then I can cancel. No, that's related to the appraisal contingency. So you will not be able to cancel and you would lose your deposit. Well, you still could cancel, but you're going to lose your deposit. It's a breach of contract. Okay. So appraisal stuff stays with the appraisal. Anything related to the appraisal being short, conditions related to the appraisal, that all falls under the appraisal contingency. Loan stuff falls with the loan. Buyer is advised to investigate the insurability of the property as early as possible, as this may be a requirement for lending. Buyer's ability to obtain insurance for the property, including fire insurance, is part of the buyer's investigation of the property contingency. Failure of the buyer to obtain insurance may justify cancellation based on the investigation contingency, but not the loan contingency. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Buyer's contractual obligations regarding deposit, balance of down payment, and closing costs are not contingencies of this agreement unless otherwise agreed. If there is an appraisal contingency, removal of the loan contingency shall not be deemed removal of the appraisal contingency. So this is when you have those agents that are like, well, we can't remove the appraisal contingency because we're not ready to remove the loan contingency, or we can't remove the loan because the appraisal is not in. Well, they're separate from each other. So as long as the underwriting is good so far on the loan pending the appraisal, the loan contingency can be removed and we can leave the appraisal contingency in place. We don't have to leave them both outstanding. They are separate from each other. No loan contingency. If no loan contingency is checked in paragraph 3L1, obtaining any loan specified is not a contingency of this agreement. If the buyer does not obtain the loan specified and as a result is unable to purchase the property, the seller may be entitled to the buyer's deposit or other legal remedies. Okay, pretty clear. Appraisal, section B, 1, this agreement is, unless otherwise specified in paragraph 3L2 or the attached contingency removal form, contingent upon a written appraisal of the property by a licensed or certified appraiser at no less than the amount specified in paragraph 3L2 without requiring repairs or improvements to the property. Appraisals are often a reliable source to verify the square footage of the subject property. However, the ability to cancel based on measurements provided in an appraisal falls within the investigation of the property contingency. The appraisal contingency is solely limited to the value determined by the appraisal. For any cancellation based on the appraisal contingency, buyer shall deliver a copy of the written appraisal to the seller upon request by the seller. Okay, so if you're going to cancel based on the appraisal contingency, be prepared to hand over a copy of that appraisal. No appraisal contingency. If no appraisal contingency is checked in paragraph 3L2, then the buyer may not use the loan contingency specified in paragraph 3L1 to cancel this agreement if the sole reason for not obtaining the loan is that the appraisal relied upon by buyer's lender values the property at an amount less than that specified in paragraph 3L2. If buyer is unable to obtain the loan specified solely for this reason, seller may be entitled to buyer's deposit or other legal remedies. Any questions about the appraisal contingency?
Could you explain that a little better?
Yeah,
Amy?
which section?
The no appraisal, number 2.
Oh,
Contingent.
yeah, so if there's no appraisal contingency and the appraisal comes in short, it's
Right.
the same thing that we crossed over up there at the loan contingency. We can't utilize the loan contingency to cancel the agreement. So if the appraisal contingency comes in short and you have no appraisal, or if the appraisal comes in short and you have no appraisal contingency and the buyer decides to cancel based on the shortfall of the appraisal, or they can't qualify for the loan because they don't have enough cash to cover that shortfall, that is a breach of contract and they could be due either their deposit, the seller could be due the deposit or other legal remedies depending on what's specified in the agreement. Does that make sense?
Okay, but isn't it that the loan will not get approved if, okay, never mind. I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Investigation of the property. This agreement is as specified in paragraph 3L3 contingent upon the buyer's acceptance of the condition of and any other matter affecting the property. It's the investigation of property. D is the review of seller's documents. This agreement is as specified in paragraph 3L4 contingent upon buyer's review of the seller's documents required in paragraph 14A. E is title. This agreement is as specified in paragraph 3L5 contingent upon the buyer's ability to obtain a title policy provided for in paragraph 3G and on buyer's review of a current preliminary report and items that are disclosed or observable, even if not recorded or not specified in the preliminary report, and satisfying buyer regarding the current status of title. Buyer is advised to review all underlying documents and other matters affecting title, including but not limited to any documents or deeds referenced in the preliminary report and plotted easements. Okay, so just so you know, it's not just the review of the preliminary report, it's those additional documents that fall underneath title and the buyer's ability to get title insurance. There are properties that we are having problems getting title insurance for. So just make sure they can obtain it. And if you're having problems getting title insurance on a property, Orange Coast Title is the most lenient. I'm trying to get back to the next page. There we go. 10. Any questions so far on, I think we just covered like 7, 8, and 9. 8 and 9. Oh, see, I was like, wait, I think I've got more. Hold on. I'm trying to find the right page. This layout that it did today. Not held responsible. All right, move you. Let's shrink you down even better. There we go. All right. The buyer has 5 days this is related to the preliminary title. The buyer has 5 days after receipt to review a revised preliminary report, if any, furnished by the title company, and cancel the transaction if the revised preliminary report reveals material or substantial deviations from a previously provided preliminary report. So keep in mind throughout your transaction, sometimes you get updated preliminary title reports as they pull more information from the seller, when they get the seller info sheet and all of that information. So if there is something that comes up on the preliminary title report that is a substantial deviation or material defect, right, against the property, then they have 5 days to review that and they can cancel, even if all of their contingencies have been removed.
What's considered substantial?
The solar is leased and not owned, and the seller is not going to pay it off. Or there's an easement on the property that wasn't previously disclosed. So something substantial, right? F is condominium and development disclosures. This agreement is as specified in paragraph 3L6, contingent upon the buyer's review of common interest disclosures required by Civil Code 4525 and under paragraph 11K, which is the CI common interest disclosures, right? So we have the right to review those. The buyer's review of leased or lien items contingency, buyer's review and ability and willingness to assume any lease, maintenance agreement, or other ongoing financial obligation, or to accept the property subject to any lien disclosed pursuant to paragraph 9B6 is as specified in paragraph 3L7, a contingency of this agreement. Any assumption of the lease shall not require any financial obligation or contribution by seller. Seller, after first delivering a notice to buyer to perform, may cancel this agreement if buyer, by the time specified in paragraph 3L7, refuses to enter into any necessary written agreements to accept responsibility for all obligations of seller disclosed lease or liened items. Okay, so it has to be seller disclosed leased or liened items. So if something pops up in the middle of the transaction that's leased or lien that the seller has not disclosed yet, then the buyer has time to review those and then work to either decide to move forward with that or not. They can cancel. That's a new material item that would pop up. So it's important if you're representing the seller to make sure you know of all those items before you enter in the contract. Okay. Removal or waiver of contingencies with offer. The buyer shall have no obligation to remove a contractual contingency unless seller has provided all required documents, reports, disclosures, and information pertaining to that contingency. If the buyer does remove a contingency without first receiving all required information from seller, buyer is relinquishing any contractual rights that apply to that contingency. If the buyer removes or waives any contingencies without adequate understanding of the property's condition or buyer's ability to purchase, buyer is acting against the advice of agent. Okay, so if you have received the TDS and SBQ and all the required disclosures up front, you remove that inspection contingency, and then all of a sudden the seller comes back and says, oh my gosh, I forgot to disclose this. Here's more information. The buyer gets 5 more days to review that new material information that's being provided to them. If they remove the contingencies before they've received that TDS and SPQ, and then based on the review of that, they go, oh my gosh, we shouldn't have moved forward with this, it's too bad. So make sure you have that stuff up front so that you're protected from any changes to it versus getting it initially after you've removed those contingencies. Also, keep in mind, in case I haven't mentioned it yet, under that appraisal contingency, if my buyer removes the appraisal contingency and they are a VA or FHA buyer, they still have their rights under the VA FHA addendum that states that the property is to appraise at the purchase price. So they still have their rights under that. And if it doesn't, they can still cancel even with the appraisal contingency removed. You would want them to waive their rights under that addendum. In addition.
There's a way to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you put that in the counteroffer and?
Absolutely.
Apply that forward?
Absolutely.
To clarify, make sure I understood you right. If you are representing the buyer and they remove their inspection contingencies after they've already received the SPQ and the TDS and everything else, and the seller amends something, decides to add in something else that they forgot, but you've already removed your contingencies. Did I understand you right? That
You have 5 more days to review the change.
the buyer does, right?
Yes, the buyer
Okay,
has. So
okay.
if the buyer receives the TDS SPQ, they remove their inspection contingency was the question, and then get new information from the seller, they amend one of those documents or include an addendum to one. There's new information that's uncovered. The buyer gets 5 days to review that new information and they can cancel. And that's part of their, they'll be within their contractual rights to cancel. All right. Removal of contingency or cancellation. For any contingency specified in paragraph 3L or 8, buyer shall within the applicable period specified remove the contingency or cancel this agreement. For the contingencies, for review of seller's documents, preliminary report, and condominium plan development disclosures, buyer shall within the time specified in paragraph 3L or 5 days after receipt of seller disclosures or CI disclosures, whichever occurs later, remove the applicable contingency in writing or cancel this agreement. So that's that 5-day period that you get in addition to your contingency if they deliver them later. If buyer does not remove a contingency within the time specified, seller, after first giving buyer notice, a notice to buyer to perform, CAR Form MBP, shall have the right to cancel this agreement. Okay, so remember that our contingencies don't just automatically remove, we have to remove them in writing. And the seller can't just cancel because we didn't remove them, they have to serve a notice to perform. Sale of buyer's property is number 9, or sorry, J, 8J. This agreement and buyer's ability to obtain financing are not contingent upon the sale of any property owned by the buyer unless the sale of buyer's property, CAR Form COP, is checked as a contingency of this agreement in paragraph 3L8. Okay, so you got to check that box if it's contingent on the sale of a property.
That's not stated anywhere on that front page.
It's 3L8, which is on, so it's going to be section 3 of the grid. It's under the contingency periods.
Okay, so it is stated.
Yep.
Okay.
You just have to
That
check the
seems
box.
like that's very important.
Very important. You have to check the box. It's not.
Hey, Amy.
Yep.
Hi. We were just discussing the notice to perform, and so weekends and holidays don't count. Is that right?
They do count towards the days to performance. They don't count towards the actual day of performance. So today is Thursday. If I served the notice perform today, they would have Friday and Saturday to perform. Generally speaking, then I could cancel it on Sunday, but because it falls on a weekend, I would have to wait until Monday to actually cancel it. So it gives them bonus days, but they still count towards the days. So if I served it on Friday, day 1 would be Saturday, day 2 would be Sunday. I could cancel on Monday.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely. The only thing that follows business days is the deposit, just for the record. Everything else is calendar days except for the day of performance, always rolls to Monday, whether it's close of escrow, whether it's a contingency removal, notice to perform. If it falls on a weekend or a holiday, it rolls to the next business day for the actual day of performance.
Amy, I have a question.
Yep.
So I think this kind of goes with the cancellation. So if you're going through negotiations and the seller says, oh, you know, if we can't come to terms, I have like backup offers waiting to come in. And do they have to show you proof of those backup offers?
They do not. As long as you are in breach of contract and they've served you a notice to perform, they can cancel that contract and move forward. The only time they are required to provide proof of a backup offer is on the contingency for the sale of the buyer's property. That contingency allows them that they actually to cancel that contingency before the contingency's up. There's stipulations in the bottom of that. I think it's either 2 or 3, and there's an A, B, and C down there at the bottom that either stipulates that they can continue to market the property and collect backup offers at any time is what it defaults at. The second option is that they can do it for 17 days, or you can change that. And then section C is that they can't do it at any time during the agreement. If they fall within that, they've collected a backup offer and they've waited the appropriate amount of time as stipulated on the bottom of that form, they can then serve a notice to perform to remove that contingency. And the buyer actually, they have to provide proof of the backup offer, and the buyer would then not only have to remove that contingency, but show proof they can close without selling their property. So that's the only one where they have to provide proof of backup offer.
Okay, got it. I'll have to rewatch this to get that through, but thank you.
Everybody's in agreement with you, Vanessa. All right, items included and excluded from the sale. Look at, there's a whole section now for this. Note to the buyer and seller, items listed as included or excluded in the multiple listing service or MLS, flyers, marketing material, or disclosures are not included in the purchase price or excluded from the sale unless specified in this paragraph or paragraph 3P or as otherwise agreed. Any items included herein are components of the home and are not intended to affect the price. All items are transferred without seller warranty. Okay. Items B, items included in the sale. One is all existing fixtures and fittings that are attached to the property. Two is existing electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, and heating fixtures, ceiling fans, fireplace inserts, gas logs and grates, solar powered systems, built-in appliances, and appliances for which special openings or encasements have been made, whether or not checked in paragraph 3P. So if the dishwasher's there, there's technically a special opening made for that dishwasher. Even if it's not checked, it's supposed to stay. Window and door screens, awnings, shutters, window coverings, which includes blinds, curtains, drapery, shutters, or any other material that cover any portion of the window. So now, just so everybody knows, whether it's custom drapes or just your IKEA curtains, they are now included in the sale of the property unless otherwise specified. Okay. Attached floor coverings, television antennas, satellite dishes, air coolers or conditioners, pool spa equipment, including but not limited to any cleaning equipment such as motorized or automatic pool cleaners, pool nets, and pool covers, garage door openers, remote controls, mailbox, in-ground landscaping, water features and fountains, water softeners, water purifiers, light bulbs, including smart bulbs, and all items specified as included in paragraph 3P if currently existing at time of acceptance. They've clarified it much better now, so hopefully we'll have much fewer disputes. This also means that you need to make sure you clarify it with your sellers. Note, if the seller does not intend to include any item specified as being included above because it is not owned by seller, whether placed on property by agent, stager, or other third party, the item should be listed as being excluded in paragraph 3P or excluded by the seller on a counter offer. So if the stager came in and hung drapes as part of their staging, please make sure that that's stated as part of the contract that it's not included with the sale, not just in the MLS. Otherwise, you're going to owe your stager some new drapes.
I actually just showed clients, they got him a contract and he's like severely obsessed with these curtains. And he kept talking about it, but didn't put it in the contract. I was actually just sending them a screenshot of this, well, Jessica, a screenshot of this
page.
Like, hey, let's talk about this.
Yeah. Okay. 3 is security system. So security system includes any devices, hardware, software, or control units used to monitor and secure the property, including but not limited to any motion detectors, door or window alarms, and any other equipment utilized for such purpose. If checked in paragraph 3P, all such items are included in the sale, whether hardwired or not. Okay. Home automation or smart home features, including any electronic devices and features, including but not limited to thermostat controls, kitchen appliances, not otherwise excluded, and lighting systems that are connected, hardwired or wirelessly to a control unit, computer, tablet, phone, or other smart device. Any smart home devices and features that are physically affixed to the real property and also existing light bulbs are included in the sale. Buyers advised to use paragraph 3P1 or an addendum to address more specifically items to be included. Sellers advised to use a counter offer to address more directly any items to be excluded.
So when you're sitting down with your seller and they have the Alexa and control Nest and Alexa turn my heat up or whatever, they technically need to leave that Alexa sound box because it's a wireless control.
You can control it without the Alexa, so you would be okay. If there are tablet controlled systems where that is the control for that, you can't actually control like the pool lights or the filters without that tablet would be included. On an Alexa system, it's the Nest can be, as long as you can control it another way, you're okay.
As long as you leave the main Nest piece or whatever, or the controlling piece, you don't actually have to leave the wireless, you don't have to leave the wireless piece, you can take that with.
You can take that with you but when in doubt, clarify.
Use an addendum.
Use an addendum. Pre-write, if you're representing a seller, pre-write the addendum with all the items not included in the sale and put it in as part of your listing so that people can sign it with their offer.
Amy, in regards to horse property,
Yes,
so would you do the fencing, the stall mats and the water troughs, all of that? You have to specify that's going to go with you or stay with the home, correct?
you would assume as long as they are not bolted down or attached to the wall that they could go with the seller. However, I would absolutely just clarify, just so everybody has the same understanding and the same expectation upon close of escrow. If it's like the auto waters that are attached to your wall, the assumption is that it's going to stay. If it's just a water tank attached by hose, then the assumption is it could go. And same thing with stall mats. If they're not like screwed to the ground, then they could go. However, again, I would still clarify.
Thank you.
Yep. The doorbell, non-dedicated devices. If checked in paragraph 3P, all smart home and security system control devices are included in the sale, except for any non-dedicated personal computer, tablet, or phone used to control such features. That's where the Alexa comes into play. It's not a dedicated device. Buyer acknowledges that a separate device to access to Wi-Fi and access to Wi-Fi or internet may be required to operate some smart home features, and buyer may have to obtain such device after close of escrow. Buyer is advised to change all passwords and ensure security of smart home features. Leased or liened items and systems, seller within the time specified in paragraph 3N1 shall disclose to buyer if there are any items specified in paragraph 3P or 9B or otherwise included in the sale is leased or not owned by the seller or is subject to any maintenance or other ongoing financial obligation or specifically subject to a lien or other encumbrance or loan, and deliver to buyer all written materials such as lease, warranty, financing, etc., concerning any such item. Seller represents, section 7, seller represents that all items included in the purchase price, unless otherwise agreed, are owned by the seller and shall be transferred free and clear of liens and encumbrances, except items and systems identified pursuant to paragraph 9B6 and 2 are transferred without seller warranty regardless of value. Seller shall cooperate with the identification of any software or application and buyer's efforts to transfer any service needed to operate any smart home feature or other items included in this agreement, including but not limited to utilities and security systems. So again, that goes back to like your solar monitoring and all of that. The seller is going to help them identify the websites, release their ownership so that they can register to be able to get on to manage those items. Items excluded from the sale, unless otherwise agreed, the following items are excluded from sale. All items specified in paragraph 3P2. Number 2, audio and video components such as a flat screen TV, speakers, or other items. And if any such item is not itself attached to the property, even if a bracket or other mechanism attached to the component or item is attached to the property, furniture and other items secured to the property for earthquake safety purposes, unless otherwise specified in paragraph 3P, brackets attached to walls, floors, ceilings for any such component, furniture, or item will be removed, and holes or other damage shall be repaired but not painted. I like this because it defaults to them being removed. The other contract, you got to check a box, nobody checks a box, and then you leave the TV mount behind, which contractually you're supposed to do, and then they complain that you left the TV mount behind. So now it defaults. So if you've got a TV on a wall with a mount, the TV was never intended to stay with the property. The mount also goes with the TV, and they need to patch those holes. They don't have to paint them. Okay. Did you tipping to the top? Oh, we're going to stop there. That was the end of section 9, which was items included and excluded from the sale.